Good afternoon. My name is Rick Anthony, and I am the Director of Arundel County Recreation and Parks, and I would like to just welcome everyone to this occasion today, this special occasion. Before we get started, I just want to make just a few announcements. We are asking, for obvious reasons, for everyone to please practice social distancing, wearing a mask. If you don't have a mask, we actually have some really nice Rec and Parks masks right there at the table, so help yourself and get one there. But we certainly want to be sensitive to the times that we are living in these days. Also, if I could, I want to break from protocol normally here, and before we acknowledge a lot of our elected officials and distinguished guests, I would like to ask if there are any members of the old Fourth Ward, any family members or even relatives. If you are present, would you just raise your hand if you had a relative? Let's give them all an applause, please. Thank you. So truly this time is about you more than all of us, but I am certainly excited about being here for this event. Certainly, we want to acknowledge our elected officials, and I want to start off with our County Executive Steuart Pittman. And you'll hear from him briefly after me. We also have the Mayor, Gavin Buckley. With the Anne Arundel County Council, Lisa Rodvian, she here. Thank you. We also have Delegate Shanika Henson. And also Delegate Dana Jones. Part of our honored guests, and will be speaking as well, is Carl Snowden, who will be giving us the history of the old Fourth Ward. Thank you. I want to acknowledge the county executive staff. I know I saw Chris Trumbauer, Chris Phipps, and Ramon Robinson. Is there any others from the county executive's office? Please raise your hand. Roz, where's right there? You are, Roz. Good. Thank you. And also the mayor's staff. Would you just raise your hand? I know I see Michelle Stevenson. Thank you all for being here. Senator Elford. I'm sorry, Senator Elford. You know, these masks are going to be difficult for us, aren't they? Thank you for coming, Senator Elford. Very good. Let's give her acknowledgement as well. So I've been the director here for approximately 10 years, and I can tell you that it's a very rare occasion that we gather for an event such as this. We certainly don't take changing the name of a facility as something that we do haphazardly. So if I could, I just want to give a little bit of the history of kind of how we got here. And the county executive is going to talk about the relevancy of his administration and the importance of the park today and in the future. And then we'll hear from, like I said, Carl Snowden, that will discuss a little more about the history of the old Fourth Ward. Two people that are here, and I've already acknowledged one of them, but that are very instrumental from my department actually inheriting the park. And that is, at that time, it was Councilman Chris Trumbauer, and the tip of the spear, Janice Hayes Williams. Where's Janice? How many of you have felt that tip of the spear in your back from time to time? If you lived in Anne Arundel County, you've done any work, I still have the marks of the Janice Hayes Williams spear. So what I didn't know at that time, we took the park over in 2017. We gave it an immediate facelift. But what I didn't realize at that time was just how much effort had already been putting into preserving, telling the story of the park, advocating for the upkeep of the park. It definitely predates, I believe, my tenure, certainly the tenure from when Rec and Parks took over the park. So Janice was very instrumental in forming a think tank in 2013, and that actually gave us the blueprint of some of the early renovations that we did here. She was very helpful, and I do need to give a shout out to all of my Rec and Park staff, especially Damien, who was the maintenance supervisor at the time, who had plenty of mornings walking this park with Janice, and Janice pointing out everything from a dead limb on a tree to a crack in the sidewalk. So it was I want to shout out to all the staff, Mark Garrity, Jessica Lays, Deputy Colleen Joseph, and all the Recon Park staff, who I certainly would not be able to do my job without the efforts of a great team. And I also want to acknowledge the Arts District, the First Sundays Art Commission, and the members of the Annapolis Art Council. Are any of those members here today? Okay, they certainly, yep. And I was going to give a special shout out to Tony Spencer, who also was very instrumental in telling the story. He's part of the Commissioner for African American Arts for the state, part of the Arts Council, and certainly a member of the African American Caucus. So thank you, Tony Spencer, for being here as well. Others involved for that effort on the think tank was Larry Griffin, Jim Martin, Elizabeth Jane Walker, Eric Evans, and former Mayor Ellen Moyer. It was just as recent as last September that I had the privilege to take part of an event which actually sprung from the think tank, and it was the kind of the evolution of continuing to reimagine Whitmore. That was actually the name of that event. We had it right here at the Stanton Center. It certainly gave me a great education of the history of this particular park. Janice Hayes, as usual, did a fantastic job. Carl Snowden here as the facilitator. One of the discussions that I had the privilege to lead was the discussion of the name change. And again, we have a department policy that any time that there is a petition to change a name or to add a name to any facility, there is an open comment period. So the timing of this Reimagine Whitmore was certainly within that scope of that open period. There was a lot of passionate discussions. 3 names really emerged from that discussion, and those 3 names were the old 4th Ward Park, the People's Park, and actually keeping it the same, Whitmore's Park. And as I began to receive subsequent emails, keeping it the same, Whitmore's Park, the numbers were far more than the rest of them. So what we decided to do is take the top 3 to our Rec Advisory Board, and I don't see any Rec Advisory Board members here, but they are the ones that are appointed by the county executive, and they represent every district in our county. And we simply just told them the history. We told them the history of the park, we told them how we got here, and we just gave them those 3 names, and we certainly let them know that obviously the most support is keeping it the same. To their credit, instead of taking the easy vote, and certainly my senior staff can attest, there are plenty of times that we bring these things to the Rec Advisory and the status quo is simply the easiest choice to make. But to our Rec Advisory Board's credit, they decided, when they really looked at the history, they decided that change was not only appropriate, but it was the right thing to do. So I give them a lot of credit for making a courageous decision, and this was in the fall. So it lets you know where we are now, especially dealing with the issues that we're facing now as a country. This the courage that they had to make that decision. That was supported obviously by the County Executive's Office, which is how we got here today to rename this park the People's Park and to dedicate it to the people of the old 4th Ward. This is just the beginning. What you see already with the improvements, we plan to continue to tell the story. We plan to work with Janice Hayes. I talked to her yesterday about doing more interpretive signage, about bringing more special events, celebrating not just the neighborhood here, but the richness of the arts and the culture and this music and the special events. So we will continue to build on that and make these improvements in the park. We also have a special little treat. If any one of you want to memorialize your family members, we will have memorial plates that we'll put on these benches. You can go to Recon Park's website and get that information, but we certainly want to do all that we can to remember the community that was here and to celebrate the future of this park. At this time, I would like to welcome up our County Executive, Steuart Pittman.
First thing I want to say Rick is back. Rick Anthony is back. We missed him. If you don't know, he's had some rough times lately, and he's recuperating. And I think this is your first public appearance. So, and I'm really glad that this was his first public appearance, because Rick had a lot of passion for this project and for this park. And some of the history I didn't even know until I got an email from a guy named Chris Trumbauer today. Part of the history I didn't know, I knew the older history, but I didn't know that there was a county executive, a few county executives back, that looked out that window across at this site next to this parking lot after it was built and thought, we don't really want to maintain that site, and it's not looking very good, and we could get some money off of that if we develop, so they were going to surplus it. And Councilman Chris Trumbauer and his, the one who's got the weapon that you were talking about, Janice Hayes Williams, who was working for him, hatched a plan, and they convinced the council to hold on this thing, just let him come up with a plan. And they went over to the city of Annapolis and said, if y'all will take care of this thing, we can keep it from being developed. So the city of Annapolis actually took care of the park for a while. And then the city of Annapolis was running out of money. And so they came back, and luckily Chris Trumbauer was still county council, and Janice Hayes Williams was still there. So they went to Rick Anthony, and they said, maybe now we could take care of this park. And that was when Rec and Parks really took charge here and started beautifying this park. That was, I think, about the time the Foot Soldiers Memorial was installed, and I know that that's something that I look at that window right up there on the corner, the 4th floor window. That's where my office is, and that stares me in the face every single day. Reverend Martin Luther King and the names of all of the Annapolis and Anne Arundel County residents who went to that march are etched right over there, and it's a site that everybody sees when they walk by, and they'll never forget. But then once I became county executive, I talked to Janice, or Janice talked to me, I should say, and made it clear to me that we had a lot more work to do here at this park, and we still have a lot more work to do here at this park to remember the families that were removed from the old 4th Ward. And I understand there are 33 deeds, and I'm hoping that we can recognize every single one of those families. I have a vision of a storyboard over here. Yeah, all 33. And you know, we have a storyboard about the old 4th Ward that's over on West Street, but we need another one here that'll tell more of the story about this location so that everybody who walks by sees it. There were people who wanted to call it Old 4th Ward Park. That was the other top choice, and I'm glad they picked People's Park. And the reason is that what this park has become is a place for people to gather who are trying to make change. So the Foot Soldiers Memorial was the first. The Speaker Bush Amphitheater, to me, says the same thing. Speaker Mike Bush made a lot of change while he served, and I love it when people gather here before they go over to the county council to make trouble and to make their voices heard. And one of those events was right before the vote on the Forest Conservation Act. This place was filled, and people were standing up here making their speeches. I've been here for the start of Black Lives Matter March that started here and went down to City Dock. There are going to be a lot more marches and a lot more gatherings before council meetings that start right here in People's Park. And then probably the one that was the most important so far was the installation of the memorial to the at least five lynchings in Anne Arundel County that's right over there against the road. And any of you raise your hand if you were here for that event. That was a moment that really went down in history, I think, for this county, to memorialize what happened right along this street, right over there where the jail was, and to recognize some of the worst parts of the history of this county. And the last thing I'll say is that one of the young leaders of the current movement in the streets, Mo Lloyd, Harold Lloyd, called me up because he was concerned about the name People's Park, how the name had been chosen, and whether it was really going to recognize the residents of the old Fourth Ward. Is Mo here? Are you here? Oh, there you are. Okay. Thank you for calling me, because Mo pushed me just a little bit further to make sure that we're not done, to make sure that we recognize those 33 families and that we tell the history here, and we will. And I know I've talked to Rick Anthony about it, and he's talked to Janice about it, and there's a plan, and we're going to make that happen. So this is really important for Anne Arundel County, and I'm looking forward to hearing more of the history from Carl, and also hearing from the mayor. So thank you all for coming. I wish we could have had more people here, but I know they're out there watching on Facebook Live.
Let's welcome up our mayor, Gavin Buckley. Thank you.
A beautiful day. Good evening. I want to thank County Executive Steuart Pittman for inviting me to participate. And I want to thank Director Rick Anthony for doing so much to improve this park over the years. And we're glad you're back. This land beneath us has seen history. Make no mistake, this land has seen some gruesome and some unfortunate history, but also family memories of generations. Some 50 or so years ago, this area was the home to not only the county jail, but what we do know, that at least one lynching took place nearby. That is why the lynching memorial marker is placed right here. But also, before the garage structure was built, 33 homes stood in this block. Families lived here, children played on the sidewalk, families sat on stoops in the summertime, people celebrated birthdays, holidays, marriages, and anniversaries. In 1968, a man named John Whitmore, who wrote the county charter and became the first county council chair, moved those folks out, raised the homes, and put up a parking structure. Until today, both the garage and the park carried his name. All of this was done under the guise of urban renewal. Mr. Whitmore's new county seat needed parking for the newly burgeoning county workforce. The homes of the African American and Jewish inhabitants on this block were in the way. The ones who didn't want to sell were told that they would be pushed out and their homes seized under eminent domain. They had to sell and relocate to the edge of town. Today it is fitting that this park is being rededicated as People's Park. Anne Arundel County Recreation Parks, under the direction of Director Anthony, has done wonders with sprucing it up. Thank you, Rick. The Foot Soldiers Memorial, the lynching marker, the Mike Bush Pavilion, the First Sunday Arts Festival, all these things help tell the real story. The workshop is a continuation of Wellness Wednesdays, stories, whatever that was. I also want to give a shout out to a couple of people who helped save this park from being surplus property. A few years back, under Leopold, Don Lamb Minor, Eric Evans, Larry Griffins, and Jim Martin, they helped save where we're standing. I also want to thank Chris Trombauer and the others who helped research and tell the story and put so much work into it under, of course, the famous Janice Hayes Williams, who really did all the work. Let's hear it for Janice. So thank you, Steuart Pittman, for renaming and rededicating this today. It is the right thing to do. Thank you.
And our final speaker for this evening, the Honorable Carl Snowden. Let's welcome up.
Let me ask everyone, take a moment of silence in memory of the people who used to live here. People whose names will never go down in history books. The mayor and the county executive talked about families and people that used to live in this community. There are people in the audience who will remember Happy Brooks. There's some in this audience that will remember a man named the Reverend Leroy Bowman. Longtime Annapolitans will remember a place called the YMCA in USO and the Star Theater. Some will remember a man named Zastrow Sims who occupied for just a moment a jail cell across the street when there used to be an old jail there. What many will not know, though it's been written about before, they just don't know. This site, for the first time in the history of Maryland, for the first time, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, representing the federal government, in 1981 found that those families, those businesses who were displaced, was displaced for racial reasons. For the first time in the history of this state, the City of Annapolis and the Housing Authority had officially been found by the Department of Housing and Urban Development to have discriminated deliberately regarding the people who lived in this neighborhood. That's important for us to pause and to hear that. That story must not be lost, it must be told. Janice Hayes Williams has done a marvelous job of trying to capture the history of this particular community, and it is a history that must not be forgotten. But there's a woman who's not here today, and a friend of mine mentioned her name, and I immediately reflected on her. Her name was Bertina Nick. Jim Martin, Bertina would have loved to be here at this moment. Bertina was the one that once said, it's not where you live, it's how you live. There's a friend of mine that's in the audience at this moment. Eliza Mae Robinson used to live on this street. Eliza Mae Robinson remembers what used to be here and the people that were part of this movement. Rick Anthony, I want to thank you and your staff for preserving, sprucing up this particular park. I want to also take this opportunity to thank Kevin Simmons for the work he has done, and to thank other public officials who have worked hard to make this area important. Now here's what I'd like to leave you with, just for a moment. Just a story, happens to be true. Across the street where we call the Arundel Center, it was not always there. Across the street was a jail. Both the mayor and the county executive made reference to this horrible event that occurred. But what was missing was its impact on the people. The year was 1906. Shanika, there were people that were in prison across the street in the old jail. A mob decided that the man who had allegedly assaulted a white woman, that there will be no trial. They broke into the building at the old jail. Took the man named Henry Davis in 1906, marched him up toward Asbury United Methodist Church, marched him through the old Fourth Ward, the Black Belt, if you will. Wanted them to know that terrorism and racism was alive and well. They took Henry Davis, and he eventually wound up at a place called next to St. John's College. Families lived there, businesses operated as they watched this man taken over near St. John's College. He was eventually lynched, hanged, shot over 100 times, his mutilated body laid for hours in the streets. An enterprising white man decided to take a photograph of this mutilated body. And they sold that photograph as a souvenir, as a postcard, for 3 cents. This park that we stand in is steeped in history. This is a park where people lived, where families had dreams, where businesses once thrived. A combination of government and racism destroyed it. It will take, in my humble opinion, progressive government and a concerted effort to fight racism to rebuild the people and the community which was affected by that decision. I ask you, as I move to my conclusion, to give this some thought. If it was your parents, if it was your loved ones who the government portrayed, who the government told through urban renewal, we'll give you better jobs, your businesses will be relocated, you will have better homes, your government will ensure that your children's future will be bright, and you discovered that was all not true. In a few moments, we're going to bring some young people near the Civil Rights Foot Soldiers Memorial. Those young people have a great task ahead of them. They have the responsibility to make sure that this history is not lost. Mo, I was so glad when the county executive said you called him and pointed out him the need to remember the families. We're going to be urging people to remember this location, because in 1963, something very important happened at this location, at this occasion. And although what that was in 1963, August 28th, on a hot, sweltering day, people from this community boarded a bus on the corner of Calvert and Clay. They got on the bus, headed to Washington, D.C. to hear a man talk about a dream that he had and to participate in a march. It was a great march. But in 1963, when Dr. King uttered those wonderful words, "I have a dream," he reminded us that we would have some difficult days ahead, and that prophecy has come true. It will take young people gathering by the legions to participate in another march More, it's a march that's important. It's a march that every young person must be engaged in. It's a march that will take place this year. It's a march that we encourage each and every person of goodwill to participate in. The march I'm referring to is the march to the ballot box in November. We must see young people turning out in record numbers and voting and remembering that a community like this once existed, and that dreams were not destroyed through government action, but a new generation with a new commitment to social justice is emerging. God bless you, and thank you so very much for this opportunity.
Let's give Carl another round of applause for that stirring memory here. At this time, we were going to go ahead and unveil the sign. We're actually going to turn this portion of the program over to Colleen Joseph. But if I could ask members of this stage, if you could make your way down. We're going to do this as photo opportunities, so there will be plenty of opportunities for you to take pictures. We're asking just for the initial picture of Janice Hayes Williams and the county executive. You can go ahead and follow Colleen there, so we can at least cut the ribbon, unveil the sign. We'll also ask our other elected officials if you can make your way toward that and that bench back there, so that we can continue to take a series of pictures and end this program in time for Carl's other program today. So having said that, thank you all for coming out today. And certainly, again, this is just the beginning of the work that we're doing here. I started looking at